So, you really dig that Latin rock groove that Santana likes to bring in his famous song, Oye Como Va. I hope I said that right. And that is the soul of the Dorian mode. So, if you want to get that sound in your guitar solos, then this lesson is where it's at. Now, the cool thing about this Santana style is you don't need to shred. In fact, the opposite. And I'm going to show you some tactics to be able to manage the Dorian mode in this video. Eyup FretHeads, in this lesson we're going to dive into two chords that I'm going to show you and a scale that goes along with it, and the scale, like I mentioned, is the Dorian mode. We're going to base this around the box one of the minor pentatonic that you might already know and love, but I will show you that regardless for people who don't have that knowledge ahead of time. So we're going to dig into these two chords first, and like I say, we're looking at the 2 chord and we're looking at the 5 chord. Now what the heck does that mean, Ricky? It means we're looking at the 2nd chord from a key and we're looking at the 5th chord from a key. Now if you've ever encountered my L7 grid videos before, then you'll know that it helps to map out where the chords are in each key. So for today, we're going to look at the key of G major, and we're going to use the L7 grid to help us to find where chords 2 and where chords 5 live, because this is going to help us where we're going to place the pentatonic scale as well, and then turn that into Dorian, this lovely juicy sound of the Dorian. Our tonic for our G major key is just here, it's at the 3rd fret. We've got chord 4 here, and we've got chord 5 here. That's the 7 portion of the L7 grid. Here is 2. This is chord 2. So we've already found them already, to be fair. There's 2, there's 3, and there's 6. But that's going to help you. Now you can just get rid of the rest of the L7 grid now and just focus on where the 2 and the 5 is. And you can see that they're on the same fret. So the 2 is going to be here. Now we know that the 2 chord is going to be a minor chord, so I could play this as a straightforward minor sound there, and then we know that chord 5 here is going to be a major sound, or if we extend it into the 7th, it's going to change it somewhat, and we have to do that to both of these chords. So for this 2 chord, this A minor 7, I can play it like this bar chord version here. Got a root, 5th, flat 7 is there, flat 3rd, 5th, and root going all the way across there. So that is a full bar chord shape that I could use, and I always think, guys, this is a little nugget, if I see that shape, I know I can play box 1 in that position. And that's box 1 of your minor pentatonic, just there. You can hear that that scale lives on top of that chord. So there you go, this is chord 2, but we're not going to play it as a bar chord, we're going to play it in a shell voicing. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take chord 5, I'm not going to play it as a major, I want to play it as a 7th. Now I could play it as an A shape here. If you look at that, there's the A7 shape there, and just to make sure you can see that shape, if I take it down into A7 proper, there you can see it's the same shape. Now the thing about this is that this isn't the best way to do this, in my opinion, but what we can do is we can utilize something from the cage system. We think about, well, that's the A shape, what shape precedes the A shape in the cage system? Yes, it's going to be a C shape, which is this one here, but we need to turn this chord into a 7th as well. So I could play this shape here. Now you might have seen this shape before. This is a C7 shape. If you think of a C down here and you put your pinky on the G string at the 3rd fret, that's a C7, that's the root note. So let's transpose it up to that D there. That gives us the D7. Now this first finger, I don't want this. I've already got the root note here in my 3rd finger, so let's make the shape a little bit easier there, and I'm going to add some juicy colour on this, because this note here, this 9th, is in our scale as well, so we can see that where that 9th is going to live, just there. So there's the D9. D9. So let's go back to this A minor 7. We're going to take it from being this bar chord, and we're just going to keep the necessary notes that gives us this shell chord. So we've got the root, we skip the A string, we get the flat 7 on the same fret as the root note, and we get the flat 3rd on the same fret as that flat 7 and that root as well. And we're only playing 3 strings. Now the cool thing about this shape that I want to show you is that if I just drop this whole shape down 1 string set, I get near enough the same shape that I'm going to need for my D9. Let me just put that first finger on there. Now I've got the D9. So you can see that if by taking that first finger off, just moving this shape here, I can move from this chord 2, which is an A minor 7 in this position here, in this key, and the chord 2 is the parent chord for the mode, which is going to be Dorian, which is going to live on top of this. So there is the home chord for Dorian in the key of G. So if we take this here, there's going to be the 5, and that's the dominant. So let's have a look at these. What I like to do is I like to use my pick on my bass note here, and then I like to use these 2 fingers here to pluck those other strings there to make the sound of the chord, but to get some sort of opposing rhythm going between the bass and the rest of the chord. So I can do that. And that'll give you that more Latin cha-cha-cha sound, which is what Oye Como Va is really, that Latin sound. It's very much the cha-cha-cha. So if we take that there and I drop that down there, you can see I'm doing the same thing here, only this time my pick is playing the A string and the D string there, but my ring finger and my middle finger are playing the B and the G strings. And that's how I'm getting that kind of Latin rhythm sound. So you can hear that, there's moving from that A7 to that D7 there. You don't have to do that picking thing, you can just strum the chords. We're doing it really basic here. I'm going to do a follow-up lesson on this as well, if you dig this kind of thing. We're going to get a little deeper into this idea and expand upon it. So we have our chords that are going to be our 2-chord loop. Now what I'm going to do as well, guys, and I will pin this at the end of the video, is up here you'll see that I will put a backing track for you to practice on that I've created, that's just these same 2 chords here with the diagrams on, so that you can actually practice this stuff. So to summarize, we have 2 chords. We have the 2 minor 7 there, and we have the 5, which is a dominant 9 chord and a D9 chord. A minor 7 to D9 there. Those are our 2 shapes. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this, where this root note is for the chord 2, we're going to put the minor pentatonic on top. Now you can play that on top of this, it works perfectly well. And you can hear that goes really well, but if we want to get Dorian, we want to bring in the personality notes for Dorian, and those notes are the 6th and the 2nd. So I'm going to add those notes to my box 1 here. So the beautiful thing is you have the skeleton of the box 1, and we'll just add in some extra notes to it. And let me just show you this first string here. So to get the Dorian sound out of this string, instead of just having the root and the flat 3rd, we're going to add this major 2nd just here, a whole step up from the root. So you can see there, I'm going up a step and a half step on that E string. Then what I do, I'm going to go up on there like I would do with my pentatonic. You can see that's 3 notes per string, that's 2 notes per string. But then here is the thing that happens. If I imagine that line across my pentatonic there, what I do is I imagine a little double stop there. Those are my 2 extra notes that I need. So if I go root, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, the next note I need is my 6th, which lives in that little double stop that I'm adding there to my minor pentatonic box 1 pattern. So if I add that in, then what happens is I get frets 4, 5, and 7 there. So that's my 6th. This is the flat 7, and this takes me back to the root again, and I can play that as 1 octave. So I've got root, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, flat 7, root. So you can see I get the whole scale there. Now what I can do is, because this is a string pair, what I can do is I can replicate that over here on this string pair here. Now if you remember, there's my pentatonic. If I add that little 2-note idea there, then what happens there is I'm just transferring these 2 notes over here. Now I jump ahead a little bit here because, like I said, this was the 6th. Well, this is a repeat of the 2nd. So the 6th and the 2nd are conveniently located next to each other there. That means that when I play them here, they're conveniently located next to each other here. So there's the 6th and there's the 2nd. So you can always remember them within the confines of that box pattern. And then when I play that, I know that that's the 6th. If I play that there, I know it's going to be the 2nd. Right, so here, let's run through this again. So we've gone up an octave. So there's the 2nd. Okay, there's the flat 3rd. There's the 4th. There's the 5th. There's the 6th, which is a personality note. This is the note that gives it all that personality, the flavour. If we think about it, we can hear it's just there. It creates some tension in there. And the thing to note is that, yes, Dorian is classed as a minor mode, but your regular minor, that sounds dark and emotional, whereas Dorian is a minor sound, but it sounds uplifting and soulful because of that 6th. That 6th lifts everything, and the beauty of that is it mind melds with your blues playing perfectly. Something to draw on here is that the A minor is the home sound and the D9 here is the tension sound. So when I play this D9, you can hear it wants to go there to that 2, and that gives it more resolution. But what we could do is we can create more tension on the chord with how we use this Dorian scale. So if I played the A minor 7 here, and then I added the major 2nd, then overall the chord of the moment becomes an A minor 9, because really we have the 7th in there and the 3rd in there, and what happens is we end up extending the chord with this 2nd, which becomes a 9 because it's a compound interval. That sounds way too complicated. When we think about extensions, the 2nd can become a 9th, the 4th can become an 11th, and the 6th can become a 13. So if we take this 2nd here, because we've got a flat 7, what happens is that 2nd becomes a 9 instead. So that's how we extend this chord. So really, even though that A minor 7 is being played there, if that note is on top and working in the chord of the moment and superimposed at the same time, then we are hearing an A minor 9. Okay, so we've done that with that A minor 7 there, but what goes on with the 6th? Okay, so we have that 6th as well. So let's look at that from the mode. So we've got the Dorian. So there's the 6th. Now if I place that on top of that A minor 7, like I said before, the 6th becomes a 13. So in that moment that you play that note, you are going to get an A minor 13. That's great for the 2 chord, but what about the 1 chord here, okay? So when we play the D9 here, what happens is that major 2nd that we had here, what happens is this becomes a 13. You may be used to playing this 13 chord like this, where you take the 9 chord and you extend it with your pinky. You can do that there, but that That's one way of seeing how that note fits into that chord personality. And then conveniently, what happens is when we play that major 6 here, we can see that that conveniently is the 3rd of the D9 chord, which is really handy because that's a target note that we might want to go for when we land on that D9. So even though all this is going on, if you play the scale and listen to where you can place that 2nd and that 6th from the Dorian on those chords, those chord voicings will happen automatically. It will just do its job. The chords will change into A minor 9s and D13s without you having to think about it. Okay, now we have an idea of what the harmony is going to be like. So how do we build phrases and actually use it to create solos? Well, here's the idea that I want you to take on board. We're going to do short melodic ideas, and that's 3 or 4 notes. So let's just take these 3 notes here. That's what we're going to play on top of our backing track. Let me put the backing track on now so you can hear what's going on. So you can hear there was some variation within that, but I was only thinking and focusing on these notes here and really hammering home the personality note of that 6th there. Now what we can do as well is we can do repeating motifs, repeating ideas. So let me show you a couple of ideas of how we can do that. Now another thing that Santana likes to do is have sustained notes, and I think he actually has something built into his pedal board or his guitar that enables him to get really long sustain on those notes. So what we want to do is be able to do the same thing and just use our fingers to do that. So let me just show you how we can incorporate that with some of the previous ideas. Long sustained notes give you time to think about what you're going to do next. And remember, we're keeping this simple. We're not going down shred territory. We're not interested in overplaying. We're interested in being melodic and listening to the sound of the notes on top of the chords and what is being created in the chord of the moment. Now, another thing that Santana likes to do is bending, and we can actually use the notes that we already have from our pentatonic. So let me just play it along with that. Last little techniques that I think you'll really dig is something that I generally call the not notes, the notes that are not in the scale. And what we're going to do is we're going to create grace notes where we slide from a not note into a scale tone. So if we take something like this here on 5, 7 and 8 on the thin E string, I have this note here that is not a note that I'm meant to play. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it to create temporary tension by landing on it. Because it's not part of the harmony, it's going to sound off for a split second until I quickly slide it into a scale tone, or even thinking about it as being a chord tone. So let's listen to what that sounds like. So you can hear there, just using that grace note idea where you slide in from a note that doesn't belong to the scale into a note that is part of the scale, that can create all those little stylistic things that Santana might do. Now the next job for you is to click that backing track in here and practice these ideas. And like I say, chord diagrams will be on there as well as a diagram for the scale so that you can copy along and play these ideas, guys. So if you want to get these Latin rock vibes down, click this video here and make sure you practice along to the scale and the chords in there.